Welcome everyone. Today we'll explore the exciting world of web applications. We will learn what they are, how they differ from websites, and the magic behind their creation. Buckle up and get ready to be amazed. What exactly is a web application? See, let's imagine a website that lets you to edit photos, order food, or play games. That's a web application. Unlike static websites, web applications are dynamic and allow you to interact with them, making them more like software programs you access through the web. So where does the program runs exactly? So it runs on the servers, remote servers, okay, not directly on your device. So you access those applications using a web browser like Chrome, Safari, Firefox, etc. Right? So let's see the differences between a web application and website one more time. See, think of a website as a digital billboard showcasing information, while a web application is like a self-service kiosk where you can actively engage and get things done. Websites are great for presenting content, while web applications are all about interaction and accomplishing tasks. So, how web applications are structured, right? The web applications are having three layers, right? One is presentation layer, business logic layer, and data layer. So these are the building blocks of a web application. Okay. What is presentation layer is in the front end. That's what you see and interact with, right? The business logic layer is at the back end, right? This is where all the processing of data is happening. It's the brain behind the application. All the complex calculations are being carried out in the business logic layer. It will, okay, it will convert the data back and forth to enable the presentation layer to understand and to enable the data layer to store the data, right? So it acts as a middleman between presentation layer and data layer. So data layer stores all your data. So what is your data? Is your name, your email ID, your interactions with people in social media, your photos, all those things are data. So let's see how it works, right? When the presentation layer gets some input from the user, right? It will send to the business logic layer. So business logic layer processes the information. And if it needs data, it goes to the data layer, accesses the data, get the data back to the business logic layer, processes it, and sends back to the presentation layer so that it can understand. So there are various technologies, right, in these layers, different layers. So let's dwell into it one by one. So the front-end technologies are the presentation layer composed of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. For your information, your browser understands only these three: HTML, CSS, JavaScript, right? So what is exactly HTML? Just like building a house requires different tools, web application development uses various technologies. HTML provides the foundation, CSS makes it look good, and JavaScript brings it to life on the front end. On the back end, powerful programming languages like Python or Java handle complex tasks, while the databases like MySQL, MS SQL, Oracle store all the important information. Okay, so that means the front end, right? So the HTML defines, it's a structure. So what's exactly is a structure? So the thing is, there is the web page, right? It will say where exactly the table will come, where exactly to place the image, where exactly to paste the buttons, where exactly to paste the text. All these things are mentioned in the HTML. CSS is cascading style sheet. It will talk about styles, right? So it will say which font we'll be using, what is the size of the font, what is the color of the font, right? All those things are mentioned in the CSS. So JavaScript is for interaction. What is interaction? For example, you have an application, right? You are entering a data in the form. Take, for example, email ID. you need to validate the email ID before it sends back to the backend. You need to check whether the email ID is the right format. You cannot just enter a name in the email ID, right? The email ID consists of @ symbol, dot, all those things should be part of email. It validates for its email, no, it validates the email very well before it sends back to the backend. As well as, for example, take name field. So name field, for example, I can restrict the name field to 100 characters. I can do that with JavaScript, as well as name field should not accept any special characters or numbers. It can be done in JavaScript. Okay. The backend technologies are to handle complex tasks like, uh, for validating the user, the access the user has, right? Every user will not have the same type of access. For example, in a company, and managing director will have access to all the data, but data entry person will not have access to all the data, will have only access to certain pages. All these things are being handled by the backend programming languages like Java, Python, PHP, C Sharp, anything. So the databases, right? The databases, the data layer, we have databases like MySQL, Oracle, okay, PostgreSQL. It is, as we said previously, just to store data. So now there are so many technologies, right? And the backend as well as the database. How will we decide what technology to use? Right? There are certain criteria, right? So for example, we have to find what important thing is. You don't decide on the technology first. Okay. First thing, we have to see the problem statement. Okay. What is the problem we are going to solve? How we are going to solve? What is the end result of the problem? What is the expectation from the application, right? All those things need to be determined first. Then the cost should be determined, right? How much money we are willing to spend. So then the important thing is, right, many people miss it. So the availability of support, whether the technology I'm going to use will last for a few years. I'll get whether it has the proper documentation, whether there is someone who can support the application support the technology, right? We have to determine that first. We cannot just go to any technology given by, some unknown company. Then we'll be in a problem. So any application project life cycle, right? The maintenance is the huge biggest phase. So that means creating application, it will run for 10 years, but you'll develop in 5 months or 6 months, right? Development phase is only 10% or 20% of the entire life cycle of the project. So you have to think of maintenance. How it be easy to maintain the whether I'll get upgrades, all those things you have to check. Then what is the complexity of the application is very important, right? How complex it is. That will help you to decide the technology. And team expertise is also an important factor to consider. Whether your team has expertise in a particular technology, that need to be determined before we decide on the technology. And security of the technology is very, very important. Nowadays, there are certain technologies that are vulnerable to attacks. So we have to check whether the technology I choose has any vulnerability. If the technology has vulnerability, it will be carried over to our application. Then we'll have a lot of problems. So we have to make sure the technology is free of vulnerabilities, or it has fixes, or it has workaround. Okay. Then we see the web application is transforming our world in a greater way. Right? The impact of web applications extend far beyond personal convenience. They have transformed how we work, shop, learn, and interact with the world. From the rise of e-commerce to the mobile revolution, web apps continue to reshape our lives in a profound ways, right? So now how many people are standing in bank queues? There are so many banks, we have to send money, I use web application, right? So to receive money, Or there, I do. How many people are using checks anymore nowadays? Very rarely, right? To pay bills, you're not going to. You're not standing in the queues of PUB or uh, Starhub or Singtel, right? You're just paying online. All those things, web applications taking care of those things, right? So, and important thing is education, right? You learn on from online sources, right? And during COVID times, we all know that we all there were a lot of online learning, distance learning, right? Whenever okay, those were web applications help those things, right? Okay, so see, governments around the world wide are increasingly using web applications to deliver services to improve efficiency and connect with citizens. These digital tools offer transparency, accessibility, and a faster way to provide essential services. So this is, for example, applying passport, licenses, and other documents are online, right? So your birth certificate, death certificate, everything is in online. So the government, for example, you can book an appointment with doctor, right? You can book an appointment in a hospital. Everything is online, right? Everything is through web application. Okay, so you can schedule vaccinations. All those things are being done like this using web applications. So it helps us a lot. It's beyond convenience. Okay, let's see how Singapore is using web application. Right, Singapore is a leading example of how governments can effectively utilize web applications to create a smarter and more efficient nation. These initiatives show us how web apps can improve government services, enhance citizen engagement, and contribute to a better quality of life. We are already seen it, right? So there is no need to carry money anymore in Singapore, right? Physical cash is not needed most of the places. You can use your mobile apps to pay. Okay. Even school kids are using their phones, their watches to pay. Okay. So let's see, right? We had during COVID time, we had seen how government effectively used these things for contact tracing and manage COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, this brings the end to our presentation today. So thank you.